Hello, mate. You all right?
Oh, I'm great. Great.
Yeah.
I'm having the time of my life at the moment. I'm having a wonderful time.
Looks like it.
Yes. Well, we had new follower, which was great. We've got. I know I've got a bit of editing to do. We've got Sean Wilson's one to edit. We've got loads of stuff. I mean, he loved his time with us, and it's lovely when you get the guests who have enjoyed things. And yeah, I can't be happier at the minute. It's great.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I remember that feeling well from many years ago. Yeah. Yeah, before you started giving me such shit fucking stories to read.
Oh, here we go. Shall I do the synopsis then?
Please do the synopsis.
Okay, we read The Werewolf. I got to look up her name because I can never remember her name. Clemence Housman. There you go. It was The Werewolf by Clemence Housman, late 1800s, but 1894. And it's a Norseman tale. It's actually a Slovakian-based tale of this village who live by the sea, who are a village of fishermen. And in the deepest, darkest midwinter, whilst they are all inside fixing their fishing nets and alike, they get visited by a stranger known as Whitefell, of which there were these twin brothers, Sven and Christian. And Christian notices paw marks outside before this woman turns up, after a bit of a spooky thing of there being some false openings of a door. And he notices the paw marks and declares her as a werewolf. But Sven has already fallen in love with this beautiful stranger and says that he should never mention this kind of thing again. And then starts this idea of this fight between the brothers, as one is absolutely hell-bent on discovering and taking the identity of the werewolf, whilst the other one is in love with this woman who is a werewolf, and you're not sure, isn't she a werewolf? A couple of people have gone missing, presumed munched. And then he goes and finds out that in order to kill a werewolf, you need some holy water, and he gets some holy water, and then he starts to chase down the woman. And we end up with this chase sequence across the icy plains where he uses the holy water, but dies of the cold and the injuries that he has sustained whilst fighting the werewolf, and we learn that she is genuinely a werewolf. And that's when the brother of Sven turns up and then realizes that his dead brother, his frozen popsicle brother, that is now sort of like stiff as a board, was right all along, and he now feels terrible because it really does allure that he may have had sexual relations with a werewolf. And he sees the body of the wolf there, and he kind of realizes that it's all, it was all real in the first place. And that's the Tale of the Werewolf. Is that the one you read?
It's pretty much the same one I read, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much the same one, yeah.
And so the question I have to ask is, and what did you think, Ash?
Fucking loved it. I absolutely fucking loved it. It was brilliant, yeah. It did the thing that werewolf stories do so well, with the fact that for the first quarter of it, you're wondering, is she, isn't she? Is that one a werewolf? The story's called A Werewolf, so you know a werewolf's going to appear in it somewhere. Otherwise, it's going to be a major fucking disappointment. So you're there reading it, and it starts off discussing Raoul playing with his puppy. That's not a euphemism. And you're there thinking, oh, the dog's sort of like bitten him a little bit. The dog's licking some blood. Is that how you get werewolves? I don't fucking know, because I've not read anything this old about werewolves. And yeah, as it goes along, you're thinking, oh, Christian, I wonder if he's a werewolf. He's very athletic. Then this woman turns up, and it is a little bit of a giveaway that she sort of like got the goth name of, yes, my name is Whitefell. Oh, fuck off. Come on, Betty, what's your real name? Yeah. But no, I thought it played the whole thing really well. I thought we'd got all the narrative build up as to who is going to be the werewolf, where's the werewolf going to come from. And yeah, when she finally came along, I thought, excuse me, it subverted norms as well. The fact that Housman is sort of like creating a female werewolf, a female monster, in a time when lots of monsters were male. So yeah, I thought it worked for me. I did think towards the end it was sort of like trying to build too much narrative tension, and I was thinking, oh, just get out of the fucking snow, find the dead body, and let's get home and done with this. But yeah, narrative tension. Some people like it, some people don't. So yeah, no, excellent choice. I really, really liked it. What did you
Thank
think
you.
of it?
I loved it. I remember I read it years ago. I didn't know who it was written by. You know, this kind of thing where I've read a lot of stories and I had no idea who they were until now. And it was wonderful because it brought back memories. As I was reading it, it brought back memories of reading it. I'd forgotten all about the Raoul bit at the beginning. I thought that was a magnificent piece of writing in its pages. It's like 4 pages of this child just running amongst the feet of adults and just being a child. And it's so beautifully written in the way that the kid, they're just almost slightly kicking him out of the way and all that until the point where he grabs a tool and cuts himself. And then it becomes a panic.
But yeah,
you're
but that
looking at
part where he's looking at the legs under the table, I thought that was an excellent example of Shklovsky's notion of defamiliarization. The fact that you're sort of like looking at the world from this completely different perspective, and you're seeing something that's so regular, but seeing it anew. So
and
I thought that
draws you in. It just absolutely draws you into this other world of the child, and you are so lost in that it's kind of amazing that when you come out of it into the adult world, and because Raoul is the one that the first victim of wolf munching. Or presumed wolf munching.
Yes. Let's keep calling it that because that doesn't sound vaguely dirty and sexual at all.
There was another one. There is we refer to some of the language in the segment, but you didn't actually have to try too hard. She didn't have to try too hard to pull the heartstrings when the child dies. You understand because you have lived with this child and you understand the child's importance. Without being all kind of flowery and doughy-eyed over it, because you get the freedom that this child has, and you know how loved this child is, without ever having to go, oh, and he looked at me with big doughy eyes, and his life was over because of, didn't have to have any of that, because you were that child for a bit, and you felt that love. Yeah. So when the child goes, you realise the pain that village is going through. It's just, oh God, it was so clever, so clever, very, very effective.
Yeah, I didn't like that she was killing children, but yeah. No, fuck it, I loved that she was killing children. Yeah, I like the way the story was set up. I like the mystery because it's one of the things that it's so underrated with werewolf stories. Yeah, it's in all the best ones. This whole idea of, oh, is it that person? Oh, is it that person? And just sort of like the fact that our suspicions are gathered. So we're basically like UKIP voters, and we're hating everybody who's out there and not trusting them. And, oh, that one looks a little bit brown, so it's probably going to steal my job. And that one, don't like the look of it. Does that make sense?
It's one of those really interesting things, isn't it? Because werewolves are they're a really old story. I mean, there's a werewolf in the I can't remember what it's called, the Tale of Gilgamesh, which is like the oldest recorded published story that we can find actually as a written story, and that has a werewolf in it. Yet what most people know as werewolf tropes come from the Universal film The Wolfman from the 1930s, 1940s actually, I think it was. And it's really interesting to see that it has such a massive part of our psyche, because it's the Little Red Riding Hood story, isn't it? Because Angela Carter uses the werewolf as part of the whole Little Red Riding Hood rewrites in The Bloody Chamber. And the whole like transmorphing into another beast. And here you have a lot of tropes that are set up. I mean, the idea of the female werewolf is a massive trope in werewolf lore, that it's always the sisters. It's like a bloodline of if you were born a werewolf, you are female. It's the male werewolves are made, female werewolves are born. That's part of that kind of lore. But it does it and I think the Nordic setting as well. It's so authentic in what it's doing, isn't it? It creates this other. It's not trying to put it on your doorstep. It's trying to, and it's just so beautifully written with only a couple of bits in it where you sit there and go, the older language, the old style of language isn't so much in the way, but it does become slightly jarring. But in the main, it's just used in such a beautiful way. The prose are gorgeous.
Yeah, really, really got a lot out of this one. I really enjoyed it. I liked, as I say, the narrative tension towards the end, where it's sort of like Christian's chasing her, and the wolves are there, and he's still chasing her, and it's just cut to the fucking end. Yeah, let's get to it. And then we've got Swen.
Yeah, but I get that as a choice, as a narrative choice at that point, because it was set up earlier on in it, wasn't it? There's the point where they open the door. He opens the door 3 times. There's a lot of that lingeringness to it, which I quite like, because it made everything barren and sparse, and it made it a good distance that they travelled when he was chasing her. You know, it gave it that kind of epic feel. It was just, for me, it was just on the boundary of going too far. It was almost like it was perfectly timed to not become boring. You know. And I
think that's where subjectivity for the audience comes in, because when Tracy and I sat down and watched the Avengers films, I've absolutely adored every second of them, and she's there saying to me, how much fucking longer is this fight scene going to go on for?
Yes.
And it's down to different audiences. It's a subjective criticism from my point of view, but it is just my opinion on that one. But did you think the religion side of it was heavy-handed?
No, I don't. It's one of those weird ones, but I think that's, again, it's a perspective thing. I think because I was reading it purely from the werewolf point of, as it's an old werewolf story, and once I got over the fact that he was called Christian, because I must admit, when I first started reading it, and they're saying that knocking at the door, is that Christian? I honestly thought they were saying, is that Christians? Tell them to fuck off. You know?
We gave at the office,
Get out of it. Don't bring your religion
God-bothering bastards,
So that side of it, and no, it was kind of like, it was so, it's holy water that you need to chuck on its feet. And it was, to me, it was a bit more brushed off than you would normally get. I'm so used to reading those Victorian stories where they really labour the whole, is it God's right and all that kind of stuff going on, that I didn't find it as bad.
I get that. I mean, I just thought, sort of like, with the main character's name being Christian, it seemed to me a little bit like, what can we call him so the readers know that this is a Christian person? I've got an idea.
Especially as the others had really Nordic names, when they're all Sven and Jan and Thora and
Raoul and Thor and Ragnarok and I suppose that part, it did seem heavy for me. Also, the notion of using holy water. Again, because this is sort of like, as you said, we've got all of our tropes from the Wolfman films. And I was thinking, why isn't somebody trying to shoot her with a silver bullet?
Because silver bullets didn't exist until the Wolfman.
Wow.
And it's an amazing thing to read when you look at it, the whole thing. I mean, the Wolfman, the Universal film, I'm going to look up the date because it annoys me that I don't know dates sometimes. And it's such an important film that you need, it's one that you should have the date for. But it is the Wolfman, really important. 1941. There you go. And the reason that's important is because the film The Wolfman is a film about the Jewish and the Romany people that were being persecuted in Germany at the time, because the writer had come out of that. So the world hadn't really known what was going on in 1941, though the war was already going on. But the whole thing of the mark of the wolf was actually the mark of the Jew, and he'd made it into a pentagram instead of the Star of David and all that kind of stuff. That was all, he was just basically putting all that on as the allegory for what the Wolfman was all about. But the whole thing was silver, that he came up with that. The Wolfbane poem, that's used in that film, that all came from that. The whole idea of it being a Romany curse, that all came from that film. He basically wrote werewolf lore in that one movie.
And it's all that people have picked up on since, isn't it? And I'm of that tribe. I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong with the way that that's been picked up. Werewolf world,
it's a genius piece of writing. I mean, the guy himself who wrote it, Let me just look it up because, like I say, Lon Chaney Jr. was in it, and it's directed by George Wagner. Who's the writer? Written by Kurt Soidmark.
Right.
Right. Now, Kurt Soidmark, brilliant writer, amazing writer. As a scripter, that was an original story of his. And saying he wrote absolutely everything, but he's a novelist. He wrote The Beast with the Five Fingers, which will be a story that you know. Just looking at some of the others, he did script. I got a feeling he wrote one of the big scripts of. He wrote The Ape, The Wolfman, Invisible Agent, The Invisible Man Returns. He wrote the script for that as well.
All right.
It was quite a big. Girls Will Be Boys in 1934. Frankenstein meets a Wolfman. He's a big script writer from that silver age of horror. You can call it the golden age of horror. Actually, I call it silver because of the black and white, but I think it's like the golden age of horror. It's a level of genius within itself to come up with those tropes that then stay and that everyone else picks up on, to inspire so many horror writers off the back of it. I think, is it Stephen King wrote Silver Bullet? So it's all the it's massive the way it goes through, and yet, like you say, because you pick up a thing like that, I can imagine a lot of people picking up, like you said before, they pick up the story The Werewolf, and you're instantly thinking silver bullets and marks on the hand, and like you said, it was like a twist. It felt like a twist on the genre to make it a female werewolf. And then that gets done in, I think it's The Howling 2. They do that. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's amazing. You made the werewolves women. And yet, here we are back in 1890 something where that's already being done because that was the actual law going back. It's a very weird one. It's almost like I feel like I just don't know enough about werewolf literature. I know a lot about it, but I don't know enough. It's almost like it never gets spoken about.
Yeah, I mean, I think werewolves in films have been one of the ones that have been most difficult for anybody to capture with any authenticity. I thought the transformation that we saw in American Werewolf in London was probably one of the best things in special effects at the time.
Yes.
It was just, wow, how has that happened? And did they use something similar in the Thriller video for Michael Jackson? Well,
the Thriller video was John Landis. So, and it was Michael Jackson had seen American Werewolf in London and wanted that. But what also gets missed at the time, the same year as American Werewolf London came out, The Howling came out. And that has an amazing transformation sequence, which is very different because they are bipedal lycanthropes. Whereas the American Werewolf in London...
Oh, look at you with your fucking university education. Oh, the bipedal lycanthropes.
And I'm not doing a dissertation on horror movies, which is just a crime.
Are the cryptoids as well?
We got the quadruped werewolf, bipedal werewolves, going full Kronos.
I mean, I thought American Werewolf in London was good, but there were times when the special effects were a little bit crappy. When we move into things like Buffy, Oz was just going around in what was basically a romper. It was basically a onesie, wasn't it?
He was in a big fluffy onesie, yeah.
Then you look at something like Dog Soldiers, and that, for me, made werewolves frightening again.
Yeah.
So, like, watching that, there was just so much tension. There was comedy in that one as well. But, yeah, that's probably one of my favourite werewolf films of all time.
Yeah, I think Dog Soldiers, it's only the way that they blow the house up using the gas oven that's the only thing that I think that ruins it. Doesn't ruin it, but it's the only thing in that film that's just completely implausible. And there's big fucking 7-foot werewolves in it. There's one on the train, which I can never remember. I think it's called, which is great.
Yeah.
Loved that one. There are some very good ones, and as you know, I always end up at role-playing games, and there's a role-playing game called Apocalypse. Dreadful game to play, amazing source material. The actual source book of it is fantastic when it talks about all the werewolves and the idea that werewolves are not just controlled by the moon. It's just that a werewolf can turn into, they can lycanthrope at any time. They can lichen at any time they want. but they have less control over the beast at a full moon. So
That's a funny thing. You should mention that. We're actually recording this whilst there is a full moon outside the window.
Is there?
Yes.
Wow. That's kind of a bit...
Yeah.
Well, that timing is absolutely superb, isn't it?
Yeah, that was... yeah, and I've got to admit, werewolves are the ones that do genuinely scare me as well. I appreciate that it's a fantastical idea that an individual can transmogrify, can change. I'm going to go with change. Right? That an individual can change. I mean, I went from, I was going to say a man, but then I thought, oh no, sexist language, right? So an individual can change into a werewolf. That part, I don't think an actual change like that could occur. But if you look at it on a metaphorical level, that we can sort of like, that we have this beast within us, I think there's a huge area of story there that's sort of like being used to bring a fantasy element to something that is reality.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you've read my werewolf story, haven't you? That's going to be in the second Blooding book. And that a lot of that is informed by, he said, looking over, I'm like you, I can look at my bookshelf and usually see the book I'm looking for, but I can't today. I've actually, years ago, I bought a lycanthropy reader, which is all these various studies done on werewolves, because there is an actual psychological condition of lycanthropy where people believe that they actually physically change. And it's such a physical or disorder that they actually do almost change their body shape because they push themselves into such ridiculous tension, you know, in the way that they kind of believing that they are completely changing into an animal. It's quite astonishing. Yeah. And then it all relates back. It's just so primal, I think, because it's so violent as well. A werewolf has no charm, has no seductive techniques or anything like that. When they become the wolf, they're not even like the wolf. Like Wolf, I love Wolf, starring Jack Nicholson. Actually, I think that's a great film, and he becomes a proper fluffy wolf. You know, that people buy dogs that look like them. You know, that doesn't matter. But the werewolf idea is they become just this absolute embodiment of violence that nothing can stop. They're stronger than the strongest man. They have knives as claws that can just rip anything to pieces, and there's no reasoning with them, and it's almost like it's the loss of control. And I think that's where it becomes so frightening for people. If you became a werewolf, you know, even if it's a fluffy onesie that you're putting on, there is the loss of control completely, and it's the fear that you can do damage to even the person you love the most, because it means nothing at that point when you're at full Krynos. I can see why it's such a frightening concept.
Frightening, but also exhilarating. I mean, being able to sort of like give up all control and just be sort of like a relentless force, just to do whatever the fuck you want, must be awesome. Yeah. I mean, with what I've been reading about serial killers, and I'm not trying to tie it all back to what I do with serial killers at the moment, but what I've been reading about them, these lunatics that just think, do you know what, fuck it, I'm going to go out there and, do whatever the hell I want. These, living without any restraints. This is just absolutely horrible. And I think White Fell, which I still rank as the shittest character name I've read in a long time.
Okay, I'll give you that. It's a dreadful name.
I mean, she might as well have just said sort of like, I'm Wolfie McWolfface or something. But yeah, White Fell. She's like, she's attractive, she's desirable, she's desired, but yeah, she's a monster.
Yeah, absolute monster. Yeah. Who's out trying to get prey. I mean, the whole point is it's the kiss of the werewolf, isn't it? She's going out and she's kissing her next victim so that she can find them again when she's in wolf form. Yeah. Yeah.
That's that's.
Now I think about it, it's a bit Judas kiss, isn't it, as well?
Yes, I suppose it is. Taking us back to the religion again.
Yeah, I just only thought of that.
Water. We've got the holy water. We've got Christian, the character, who at one point, I think Sven even sort of like compares him to being a Christ-like figure.
Well, it's at the end, and it was. I thought that was, even though it's a bit over religious, I actually thought it was really nice. I actually marked it up in here. It's when he kind of home about enduring, only because Christian was with him, and he knew surely that to him Christian had been as Christ and had suffered and died to save him from his sins. I thought, yeah, it's a bit religious, but I love the fact that he tied it to his brother. And it kind of made family God at that point, which I thought was really, really nice.
Does this mean that we see wolves then as being monstrous creatures?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because I think there's the old term, isn't there? The lone wolf is the one that you watch. Always watch out for the lone wolf, because they're the ones without a pack, because they are very, very pack orientated wolves, and the way that they hunt in packs and everything like that. So but if they're hungry, they will kill you. They will take you down without a moment's notice. Yeah, as a family unit, now we study them, they're actually an incredible family unit. You know, they have amazing support. They don't just leave the sick one at the back to die. They actually do try and support them and keep the pack together. And the only ones that are kicked out are ones that go against the pack.
Right.
So, we would be doing, if we lived exactly like wolf pack, their society is quite close to ours in a way. But if we lived very much like a wolf pack at the moment, we would be kicking Boris Johnson out on his own to not be as part of any of the pack, because he becomes a liability to the pack itself. So if you get one that goes out and arbitrarily just kills, that puts the pack at danger, because that means the hunters will come.
So you're suggesting we should feed him to the wolves, yeah?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
I think Dominic Cummings already is doing that right now.
Yes, it's it's nice to know that's happening too. It's just as you say, there's this strange duality. We sort of like see wolves. We appreciate that they're sort of like hunters and predators. That they've got this sort of like great social structure, but also we perceive them. And you'd mentioned people who have the dogs that look like wolves, and I can't remember the breed type that it is now. Tracy,
a wolf dog.
What are those wolf dogs? The ones that look like wolves. Eutonigans, thank you.
Eutonigans, right.
Eutonigans, yes. The ones that look like wolves. She's better than Google for this, honestly. She knows every dog breed out there under the sun. It just,
But isn't it amazing? Because wolves and man have always had, because every dog breed is essentially wolf, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is the original genetic modification is dogs. They were bred in different ways to become small and big and white and fluffy and being able to do tricks and stuff because of various traits.
It's hard to think that Oswald, who's that big, is sort of like, has got wolf DNA in him. But
it's completely related to the timber wolves in Alaska, yeah.
But the only person who wouldn't be surprised by that is Oswald, I think, who believes he's
God, that would be a bit of a bummer. Could you imagine that if you got bitten, right? You didn't realise what you got bitten by, and you suddenly realise at the full moon you're going to change and you turn into a chihuahua.
That would be an awesome story that's begging to be written, really, isn't it?
Where chihuahua?
Yeah. Chihuahua. Yeah. I'm going to write that down because I need to do something with that idea.
Actually, I call it werewolf, but WHERA.
Chihuahua. Werewolf. I'm sure I spelled Chihuahua wrong there, but I know what it's meant to say. Yeah, but no, I really, really enjoyed that. I thought it was to say it was 1893. I thought who. Right, Housman. So she's related to. This is going to sound redundant. She's related to Housman, the poet. And also the illustrator as well.
Oh, I don't have an illustrated version. Was there an illustrator? She's related to an illustrator.
No, this is an illustrated version that I've got, or illustrations from it, which aren't great, being honest. I mean, of the talent, there was sort of like, there's the poet, there's the writer, and then there's the illustrator. Which I don't even know why I'm pissing on him, because my talents with pen and paper, I can just about do stick figures. So
is it stick figures with like big, straight, sharp, pointy teeth?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty good. That's interesting. Apparently, this was published a year before Dracula.
Is it? Yes.
Yes.
Now, he had very similar wolves when he uses his werewolves. Very similar, as in they just turn into wolves. They're not that much big. They're not, these massive supernatural beings. They just turn into wolves that have the mind of a human. That can do that distinction type thing. So it was a very similar thing. The
suggestion here that her story, The Werewolf, was inspired by Frederick Marryat's The Werewolf from The Phantom Ship. She's setting a story in a fairly similar way to him. But then again, we're all influenced by something, aren't we?
Absolutely. Well, that was the interesting thing about going back and reading shit books, wasn't it? Because when we went back to read the shit books, it's because they didn't have anything that influenced them beforehand.
Yeah, so, I think intertextuality is such an integral part of it, isn't it?
I think it is. I think it's because, like I say, with the Castle of Orinoco, and then that other one that we read. What was the other one that we read? Don't wake the dead now. No, like that. Oh, thou shalt not wake the dead. They're not informed.
There's dead people. You'll wake them up. Yeah. Shut the fuck up. The dead here. Yeah.
We've just got the dead to sleep. The Dead's Afternoon Nap. That's another good title.
The thing I like about this is if anybody's listening to this now, they're 40 minutes in and they realise just how seriously we take literature.
But it shows the creativity. They made the reason that they were not able to truly deliver on those books is because they had nothing to compare it to in what delivering of one of those things was. They were purely writing for themselves, effectively, because there was no market to write it into. Where when you get up into the sort of like the late Victorian period, there is now 100 years history of novels to kind of go back on and go, actually, you know what? The Castle of Orinoco was rubbish. I can do that better. And so therefore they can take the same story and write it in a much more engaging way. So, I think it's, so you're always going to have those influences by doing that. But I think that's what makes it better.
So when it comes to typical horror tropes, then, I mean, obviously the werewolf has got to be one of them. The werewolf's got to be one of the things that we think, right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to read a horror story or watch a horror film. Well, a werewolf film falls into it perfectly.
I've just done this with my assembly, haven't I? I'm writing the second Blood book. Well, it's not so necessarily the second Blood book, but the second Miss Nikita book. And what she's doing is making an assembly in that kind of Marvel assemble of classic horror characters.
Yeah.
So I've gone for werewolf.
Yep.
Vampire.
Right.
Creature created by mad scientist.
Brilliant.
And a ghost. A spectre.
Excellent.
And a demon. Of course, you've got the whole kind of, there's a demon-y, devil-y, Faustian, Dealey kind of thing going on. As my
no serial killer.
I haven't got a serial... Though, actually, have I got a serial... Oh, I have a serial killer. Yeah, he's not one of the main characters, though. But there is a serial killer that gets his comeuppance because of one of the other characters. I don't want to give it away because there might be 5 people here that might actually buy the book when it comes out. So I don't want to give it away. No spoilers. But yeah, that's because that's one of the things that I play with is the idea of the serial killer.
And I think when we sort of like got those 5, I don't think there are that many more traditional aspects. Well,
serial killer, Faustian, demon, werewolf, vampire, ghost. and so serial killer. What was the other one?
You said serial killer first.
Oh, creature from Mad Scientist.
Oh, that was the Faustian one.
No, Faustian deal is where someone makes a deal for their soul.
Right.
Where the creature from the Mad Scientist, I'm going to call like zombie. It's that kind of coming back to life or creating life, avoiding death.
Right. This has taken us into the whole. This has taken us into the trope of the seven story ideas, hasn't it? So there's sort of like man against machine, which would be the creature that's been built by the mad scientist.
Yeah, that's the science one.
Man against supernatural,
ghost.
Man against God,
Faust.
Man against man, serial killer, I suppose.
Serial killer, yeah, because they're not supernatural, are they? They're just serial killers.
Man against nature,
werewolf.
Right. There's man against self.
That could be well, actually, couldn't it? Really?
Yeah. And there's another one that I've forgotten.
Man against bloodsucker. That'd be the vampire.
Yeah, can't remember what that seventh one is, which I know it's not even number 7, but yeah, man against nature, society.
Oh yeah, that doesn't come into it. But see, we got 6, so therefore that could be the second. Because we haven't got a 7th. Man against society, which would be the outsider, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So you could argue the creature at that particular point, or you could actually argue the vampire at that point as well, because they remove themselves, don't they? They remove themselves from society. But yes, I mean it's there. I think it's possible today. Wow, I've never really thought about it like that before. You kind of do it as characters, don't you? It's like you go, well, like Bride of Frankenstein and Invisible Man and Creature from Black Lagoon. That's horror characters, but to actually develop it as the idea of a trope, rather than just a character. So it's that kind of like, the resurrection.
You know me, I've got a head that likes box ticking and sort of like.
You love genres, don't you? I mean, you love the whole genre.
I adore genres, yes. Yeah. Right, so you picked out this week a absolutely brilliant werewolf story that I did not expect it to be as good as it was. Thank you so much for that.
I was expecting it to not be liked by you because of 1, I picked it, 2, it was written by a woman, and 3, it would have set you up for a schemata by calling it The Werewolf. And titles are so important to you that,
they are. Thinking... no, that worked beautifully for me. So, yeah, which means, I mean, I was umming and ahhing over what to choose for this week, since as you and Sean both pissed on my last choice. But which is fair, isn't it? Yeah, it's fair.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't piss on it from as great a height, to be fair. And I did change my mind on it, and so did Sean, actually. You did convince us that there was more to it.
I'm torn between 2 at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. And I am so desperately torn between 2, but I'm going to go with the easier option. I'm going to go with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always go with the easier option. Yeah. I'm going to go with The Horror of the Heights. By Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to reading that again.
Do you know what the other one was that I was thinking of?
Well, give it to me. We're going to read it at some point, so tell me what it is.
The Vampire by Polidori.
I nearly picked that a couple of weeks ago. We're going to have to read it at some point.
I'm just worried it's going to be absolute dog crap, but only because sort of like Polidori was there as a doctor and sort of like maybe as an extra dick for when anybody sort of like started flagging.
But to me, it's like I don't think I've ever read it. Pretty certain I've never read it. I've only ever looked at the artistry of it because there's a lot of illustrations based upon it. and it was conceived on the same night as Frankenstein. And you think, oh my God, that's amazing. You know, that because it, you know, I know it's massively influencer on things like Dracula and the vampire mythos and all that sort of stuff. So I'm looking forward to reading that at some point in the future. Because we're going to read that. We're also going to be reading in the future. We're going to read M.R. James, as I like to call him, Mr. James, The Casting of the Runes, which is a very influential story for, again, going into some horror movie type stuff. And I quite like that, talking about going into horror movies. And I think Sean's coming back to read that one with us as well. So that's going to be a good one. So we've got a few sort of lined up. And then every time it gets a little bit sausage fest, this book comes out, and then we're going to find another one in there, because that's where the werewolf came from this time, was out of that particular tome. I
was looking at a couple of women earlier, actually, but that's a different story completely.
I was going to say. And like I say, I'm going to point it out, because we don't do this enough, to be perfectly honest with you. But sat behind you at the moment, which I believe is your right shoulder, I'm trying to work out which way you're actually sat on the thing. There is the new book coming out soon. When is that? That's a proof copy.
That's a proof copy. Yeah. A gorgeous cover on that proof copy, by the way. It's beautiful.
Yeah, really, and I know, but it's a cover that came about because you had this concept, and it's interesting. I love the concept around this, in the fact that you almost stopped writing it at one point.
Yeah, I was...
And I wouldn't let you.
Pretty much, yes. I was worried that it wasn't really horror.
Yeah.
But turns out it is, yeah. Conversations with Dead Serial Killers.
So that's coming out soon. That's on pre-order now, is it?
Yes, and it's out on Valentine's Day.
It's out on Valentine's Day. The perfect Valentine's gift.
Yes.
Conversations with Dead Serial Killers.
Yeah, I don't think anything says romance and Valentine's more than... I mean, if you turn the planchette upside down, it looks a little bit like a heart.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, and it's say nothing says I love you more than being gifted the heart of your loved one as cut out freshly by a serial killer.
This is where Van Gogh got it wrong, wasn't it? You know, sort of like, here's my ear. Yeah.
You don't want to see what's in. You don't want to see what's in the other box.
Yeah. Oh, is it a wand from Hogwarts? It's not a wand from Hogwarts.
Is it one of those miniature ones? No.
Anybody who's still listening, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit family members, hit the dog. Tell friends.
And thanks for listening. We're getting some lovely comments across social medias. Actually, I had some lovely comments last week, and I know sometimes things are a little bit late getting out, but they've been some fantastic, lovely comments, and it does make us feel better, because we do this for a laugh and we do this for ourselves. But you know what? I get so much out of these conversations as well, because you get two things. One, you realise how much you actually know, which is always nice to actually get occasionally. But also, it's the ability to take that information and turn it into an insight from someone else, and you kind of grow the information because of that. So hopefully you guys get something out of that as well, in the way that goes on. So
please suggest book titles as well, because otherwise we're just going to end up trying to pick book titles that we know the other guy's going to hate. Just so that we know that they've had a week with, I've still got to read this damn thing.
And read The Werewolf, because there is actually the use of the word shagged in it, which I thought was quite funny, but just a different relation to, not the same sort of relation that you think it is, but it does refer to the wolf as being shagged. But it was quite funny. All right, mate. So this time next week, we will be looking at Arthur Conan Doyle. The Horror of the Heights by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yes, and it's up there. Heights up there. Yeah.
I got where you were coming from. I was totally Holmes on that.
Brilliant stuff.
All right, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.